Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Obviously, right now, the Warzone meta is in a pretty good place. You know, there's a lot of variety when it comes to what you can use in any given category, but at the same time, there's also a few specific weapons in every single weapon category that are the standouts, we could say. There's a few weapons that sort of rise above the rest in terms of just overall competitiveness, and today, we are focusing in on those weapons. We are breaking down the best weapon and the best loadout in every single weapon category here in Season 4. So if you enjoy the video at any point, or if you find it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. Would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new to the channel, or if you haven't already subscribed, I am always covering everything going on in COD, so feel free to subscribe. That way you can always stay up to date. So obviously we've got a handful of categories: rifles, SMGs, shotties, LMGs, tac rifles, marksman rifles, sniper rifles, and then also the pistols. Those are all the classes you can customize. And when it comes to the rifles, it's pretty close for me between the C58 and the AK-47. These I feel like are the best overall rifles, but personally, I just love the feel of the C58. It's got a slightly slower fire rate than the AK-47, but it feels like it is so dominant in game. It is that slower firing, heavier hitting rifle, very similar to what the AMAX was before. And I really enjoy using this thing. I think it's a ton of fun to use. So when it comes to the attachment setup here, first up, we obviously want to be using the agency suppressor. It keeps us off the minimap. It gives us that better control and velocity and range. So that's a huge bonus. You are predominantly using the C58 in those longer range fights. So to me, Task Force is the clear winner here. However, you could always go for like Ranger. That's going to help out with the velocity as well. But Task Force to me, with the control benefits, with the velocity and the range increases, it's a really solid barrel to use. Next up, I opt for the 3x optic. Where are we looking here? There we go. Axial arms 3x. It looks just like the T-pose now from Modern Warfare's VLK 3x. It doesn't have that, reduced visual recoil like the VLK 3x does, but it's a really clean optic in my opinion, so I go with that. Of course, we gotta have that larger magazine for trios and quads and finishing up kills and whatnot. The standard 55 round mag seems like it works really well. I really never go for fast mags because they do end up hurting their mobility a lot more, so the standard 55 round seems to work pretty well. And then we can sort of mess around with the final attachment here. Personally, I like to go for the airborne elastic wrap, or some people go for the serpent wrap, but at the same time, obviously you're not maximizing the control here. I don't really think there's much recoil, but if you wanted to maximize it, throw on the field agent instead of the airborne elastic wrap, or if you want even better mobility, you can go ahead, you can throw on like the Raider stock or even the CQB stock. Those will help out a bit with the sprint to fire time, and then also just the overall shooting mobility as well. So you can go a couple of different routes, but overall, I feel like this is the go-to rifle setup right now. Then when it comes to the SMGs, I think this is a pretty clear choice, although you can really get away with using a lot of the SMGs right now. Like, there's a lot of really good options. The MP5 is decent, the Milano is really good, the MAC-10 is really good, the LC-10 is really good, the 74U is all right, the Modern Warfare MP5, but I do think the PPSH is the best overall SMG. Up close, its TTK is great. It's got really good range with not like super severe damage drop-offs. So I feel like the PPSH is probably the best choice as of right now. So because this is an SMG, first up, we want to go for the sound suppressor. It increases that mobility some and keeps us off the minimap. We also go for the Task Force barrel. This is the go-to on pretty much all the Cold War SMGs. Then I am all about mobility. We go for the Tiger Team Spotlight in the laser position. Of course, once again, we have to have that larger magazine for playing those larger game modes or finishing up kills and whatnot. The 71 round drum actually is not all that slow for being a 71 round drum, so I really like that. Then we also have the Raider stock as well for better mobility. And as we know, this is pretty much the copy and paste Cold War SMG setup. These 5 attachments here work on pretty much every single Cold War SMG, so just keep this setup in mind if you're ever using a different sub, because chances are it's gonna work pretty well. Now next up, we've got the shotguns, which I feel like as of late have sort of deteriorated in terms of overall efficiency. Obviously, the Street Sweeper for a while there was really powerful, but they nerfed that. It's not nearly as efficient anymore. It's still really good, but I think I gotta go for the Gallo in this category. It's close between the Street Sweeper and the Gallo, but the Gallo is a bit more effective at a slightly longer range. So if you're caught out where you don't necessarily want to be when using that shotgun, obviously inside of like 9 meters is the most ideal. But if you're a bit closer, the Street Sweeper will be a bit more dominant. But if you happen to fall in those situations where you're maybe a little bit further out, the Gallo is a lot more usable than the Street Sweeper. First up, we got to go for the agency choke again. We get the velocity increase, the range increase, keeps us off the minimap, so that's all big pros there. Now for the barrel, we're looking at a couple of things here. We want some better range, obviously, and we also would love to have a better fire rate, and that is why reinforced heavy is pretty much the go-to here, because you get both those pros. The fire rate increase is great because you can just spam the weapon more, and of course the range is sort of a no-brainer. Self-explanatory, you would say, because the more range you have with a shotty, the better, especially in this case where the shotties are so limited to close range fights. Next up, of course, we want to be using the 5mm laser because, of course, we're hip firing a ton with a shotgun. After that, I go for no stock. You can go, marathon stock if you really wanted to. It's going to hurt your hip fire a bit, though. So will no stock, but not as much as the marathon stock. So I feel like that's a safe play there. And you get some insane mobility out of that. And then lastly, you can go for either of these, the 12-round tube or the 9-round tube. Just depends on how slow you want to be and how much time you want to spend reloading. I feel like 9-round tube is sufficient. Plenty of people run the 12-round tube. That is totally up to personal preference there, but this is the general layout for the Gallo, the Spaz, and it's definitely a very, very good shotgun. Obviously, it's only good up close, but in those close range fights, it's extremely, extremely dominant. Then we get into the LMGs, and again, it's a close one. The Bruin is very good. The PKM is very good, but despite the nerf, I still think the MG82 is the most solid all around. It's going to be a bit harder to use than it was before, but when it comes down to it, its TTK over all ranges is still very, very impressive. The mobility really is not all that bad. Like all around, this is definitely an above average LMG. So first up, we're going agency suppressor yet again. Same deal as before. I would say now I'm going for the match grade. Before I was using task force, and obviously you get a pretty significant slowdown. I feel like after bouncing back and forth, match grade is completely sufficient. You know, you're not getting as extreme of buffs and pros as you would with the task force, but you're also not getting as extreme of cons. So match grade completely works for what we need it. Again, I'm going to be using the 3x optic because I really do like that reticle. That's more so preference based though. Because this is an LMG, obviously you're going to be a bit slow. You don't need the larger magazine because it's an LMG, it already has that. So you're either opting for, I would say, the Raider stock or the airborne elastic wrap, whether you want overall mobility or better ADS time. To me, it doesn't really matter because you are using this LMG in those medium and longer range fights most of the time, so you don't really you lose out when using either of these, but I like Raider stock a bit more. I feel like you can slightly get more out of these pros than you would off of a rear grip. And then finally, I like to use the field agent grip. It's not super necessary because the recoil on the MG82 really isn't awful, but to make this thing just an absolute laser, I feel like the field agent really helps out there. Then we get into the tac rifles. Of course, this is Cold War weapons only, and I feel like right now, the DMR is actually probably your best bet. Like, yes, the M16 is still pretty solid. The Carve is average, the AUG is average, the Type 63 is harder to use than the DMR. So the DMR to me is the best choice here. And because it recently got the whole recoil nerf, it's a lot easier to stay on target now, so that's just an extra added pro, you could say. Again, we're starting off with the agency silencer, same reasons as before. When it comes to the barrel here, you can go a couple of different ways. Obviously, it's a bit easier to choose which barrel now because the descriptions are a bit more accurate. The fire rate overall, I feel like, is not awful, so you don't necessarily have to go for an increased fire rate, but it's definitely useful in a lot of situations, especially if you get caught up close. It could actually save your life. So Strike Team is not a bad option there. You also get the increased aim walking move speed or the ADS speed, which is pretty nice. But at the same time, Task Force is also very usable. It's going to hurt the control a little bit, but you can sort of deal with that yourself. It just depends on how fast you're firing or how fast you're spamming. And Match Grade could also help out as well. I feel like Task Force is a pretty good option here, though. But like I said, Strike Team also a solid alternative. Again, I'm going to go with the 3x optic. Pretty self-explanatory at this point. We definitely want a larger magazine. You could go 30 round speed, but you are going to hurt your ADS time. I feel like 30 is completely sufficient. And then finally, because we don't have the best control, Field Agent is going to help out there a bit as well. So pretty basic setup here, but it's going to be decent. Obviously, this is a higher skill weapon because it is semi-auto, but if you're good with it, it's very, very rewarding in the current meta. Now, for the Marksman rifles, this is a super easy choice. Of course, this is Modern Warfare weapons only. It's the Kar 98K. Probably the most popular sniper option. Not probably, it is the most popular sniper option in the game. Monolithic suppressor to start things off. Nothing too crazy there. Same deals with the agency. Just you're using it on a sniper this time. Primarily, you don't want to show up on the map. For the Modern Warfare weapons, pretty basic. For the barrels, you typically want the longest. You get that increased range, the increased velocity. The control doesn't really matter all that much here. For snipers, tac laser, of course, on Modern Warfare weapons is super, super beneficial to use. You get the nice mobility increases, primarily that ADS speed increase. When it comes to the optic, you You don't want to be using the iron sights on the car, especially in Warzone. I feel like the default sniper scope is pretty solid. You could also go for the variable zoom. And alongside that, you also got to change the reticle. I don't like the default one. Personally, I feel like cross thread is a really, really good one. Although lately I have been using cover shot quite a bit as well. So that's a great alternative. Very clean, obviously, as you can see, super easy to, track an enemy's head or stay on target if they're moving. Then finally, when it comes to the fifth attachment, I like to go for the comb stock. You get that faster ADS speed. The precision comb is also pretty good because you get that increased stability, but I'm more of an aggressive sniper. I don't really hold my breath all that much. So sport comb for me works out pretty well. Now into the final category for the primaries, we got the default snipers. And again, it's pretty close. The Tundra is very good. The ZRG is very good. Both are, I think, the two best for velocity right now. So those are better for long range sniping. Obviously the HDR and the AX50 are pretty consistent as well, but I think I got to go the Swiss. It's very similar to the car in a lot of ways. It's a more aggressive sniper. It's not as strong as, say, the Tundra or the ZRG, but I feel like its overall potential is a bit higher because it's more aggressive. You got better mobility. I just love how the Swiss feels. We're basically building this out to be the exact same as the car. So we want the Grew suppressor. We want to go for the combat recon barrel. This will give us the best velocity and in turn the best range without having to worry about bullet drop. You want to be using a laser sight as well. The 5mm laser is definitely, I would say, the go-to here because it's acting as a tack laser in a lot of ways. So that's definitely a solid option there. You could use actually the default reticle on the Swiss. It's got the weird triangle optic sort of thing. I don't think that's that bad though. I'd probably be taking that over a lot of these sights because I just don't like the reticles on a lot of the Cold War long range optics. So I'm not going for those. Instead, I am going to go for a rear grip. Personally, I don't have the last one unlocked, which is the airborne elastic or whatever. So for the time being, I'll go for the serpent grip, but usually the last one will be pretty solid there. Then also go for a magazine upgrade. You can go for the 7-round. You can go for the fast mag. It doesn't really matter too much here. The fast mag here can be very beneficial, but the reload is already way faster than the car. Yeah, because you're not chambering in single shots. It's just an actual clip. So not super necessary. I feel like the 7-round is honestly a really good choice here. Or you could even go for a grip if you really wanted to. Bruiser wouldn't be awful here. Bipod can give you a bit a better stability and whatnot. So sort of depends on what you're looking for here, how confident you are with your sniper shot. But this setup here, I feel very good with, and this is probably what I'd recommend to most snipers right now. And then, of course, we have our handguns, the final category for today. And again, it's sort of a toss-up. There's two weapons that I feel like are the best in this category, but each for different reasons. And those are the Psychov, if you're using this as a single pistol, but the M19 Akimbo is just so lethal up close. So for that, of course, we want to be going for the monolithic suppressor. You could also always go lightweight too, in all honesty, because you're only using this up close. Monolithic with the increased range is not always going to help. And of course, it's going to slow you down a little bit too. So honestly, lightweight is also pretty viable, but you are going to lose some range. Monolithic, I don't feel like is the biggest detriment if you're using it akimbo. For the barrel, I don't feel like it's the most necessary because again, you're only using this up close. You're not getting the most out of these barrels. So I'd forego using those. Of course, you want the 5mm laser because you're going to be predominantly hip firing, because obviously we are using the akimbo perk here. 2 is definitely better than 1. For as far as the trigger goes, lightweight trigger, it's going to increase that fire rate. You can just spam them more. That's going to be a huge key. And honestly, because you're not getting anything out of an optic, anything out of a barrel, or really anything out of a rear grip, you got to go for a larger magazine. Either of these works, the more the merrier in my opinion. So I go for 32 rounds. But overall, this akimbo up close is going to fry players left, right, center. Its side's TTK is seriously impressive. However, if you're just using a single pistol, you don't want akimbo, the Psychov has got to be the go-to, right? It's too easy to use in a lot of cases. We're going to go monolithic yet again. We're going to go for the automatic barrel to make the gun super easy to use. I would also go for either the 80 round or the 20 round. If you want better mobility, 20 round is definitely the way to go. 80 though is certainly viable. It's definitely usable. It's just going to slow you down quite a bit, so you're not going to have great movement, but I'll go for 80 in this case. You can also rock the Priz Rack grip for some better mobility, and then you can sort of mess around with the last attachment. You can go for fully loaded if you wanted to. You could go for sleight of hand if you wanted to, or you can go for something like a 5mm laser or a tack laser to give you some better mobility. 5mm is probably not awful because you could find yourself hip firing quite a bit with this thing, even as a solo pistol, but really anything between the perks and the laser wouldn't be a bad choice. But yeah, overall, those are what I would say are the best weapons in every single category here in Warzone, and that is going to do it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, or hopefully it helped you out. If it did, let me know by dropping a like on it. Would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new here, or if you haven't already subscribed, I am always covering everything going on in COD, news, updates, loadouts, all sorts of stuff like that. So feel free to subscribe. That way you'll always know whenever I post a new video. Once again, and as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.